Welcome, brothers and sisters. My name is Eros, and I am the Doll Maker. Today we will talk again about the pendulum, and in this episode we will have more my suggestions, if you want, my tips and tricks for your practice. These, of course, are uh, tips and tricks that has worked for me, that I have learned through experimentation and exercise in your personal experience or in your tradition. There can be differences. Now, getting to the pendulum, what other uses can we make of the pendulum aside from the direct use that we have discussed in the last episode? Well, we could use the pendulum to complete other readings made with different divination methods. The pendulum is extremely effective in completing other complex readings. Once, of course, you also have experience of other methods, because you can use the pendulum. You can ask your pendulum to add additional informations and or to specify things. You can use the pendulum to get more specific, of course, usually with yes or no answers, with yes or no questions. So and of course you also gain the advantage that since you are already working with another method of divination, you already are usually in a meditative state. So you can simply get your pendulum and get the details, get the specifics if you want, or get deeper in the meaning of the reading. Now, forgive me. This, of course, also works with methods of divination that are using cards. For example, if you are working with the tarots is if you want to get deeper using a pendulum, it's best to focus on the important parts of the reading. For example, very often the major arcanas that comes out of the reading. And you should try to use the pendulum to point and then eventually question the single cards, the single situation. So you can get a better analysis, or at least a better understanding. If instead you are working with the Lenormand, you should use the method of getting deeper with the pendulum when you are performing a complete spread, a complete game, a reading done with all of the cards of the Lenormand. So you can use the pendulum to point on the most important parts of your reading and then ask additional questions on the specific matters that are of particular interest to you. So again, please use this method when you have an extensive comprehension of the use of the pendulum for divination and also of the card method you are using for your divination. Now, in some cases, for some form of readings, this method of pointing, getting directed through micro vibration to a specific part of your reading to then ask additional questions could sometimes also be used with the rooms. Of course, also in this case, you will need to have at least, I don't want to say a deep comprehension of the runes, but at least quite an experience with the runes. Otherwise, they won't fit together, of course. Now, another different way to use the pendulum is to use the pendulum with pendulum reading tables. You can find a lot of pendulum tables even online, but if I am lucky, I am showing right now a couple of examples when I mention them here on screen, so you can follow along. Now, some pendulum tables can be extremely simple. So, just like this, they will be virtually simple aid for your readings, usually not really necessary. Other pendulum tables can be extremely complex, just like zodiacal tables or daily rotation tables. Now, actually, I very rarely use these kinds of table. And in any way, if you want to use tables for your reading, you still require a deep sensibility in following the direction your pendulum is pointing at. You need to have at least some experience in following the direction your pendulum is directing you. In a side note, forgive me, I think using a pendulum is the easiest way to use, at least to read something that is similar or exactly a classical Ouija table, instead of using a planchette, because of course a planchette can be influenced, it's harder to move, it's harder to connect with, not for everybody, of course. I'm generalizing here. As long, of course, if you are using an Ouija board that you already purified and consecrated. Obviously, again, in this sense, I recommend fumigation. Now, tables, pendulum tables, can be expensive if you are going to buy them, if you feel that you need them. But you can craft your own, of course, on wood or simply on paper, drawing them. I tend to almost never use pendulum tables. If I use pendulum tables and if I have crafted them, they are usually on fabric, because they are very resilient, very light, so I can bring them with me if I need to travel or go into the woods or in nature in general, and so on. They are extremely resistant. Now, many of my students prefer wood in general, but also if they need to craft a table. So, you will need, when you're crafting a table or when you're buying a table, to find a balance between practicality and the artistical purposes that you want to achieve. Of course, a table, just like everything you use in your practice, should be special for you. So, knowing your objectives, find a balance between beauty and practicality, just like we always do. Now, a completely different use of the pendulum is for spiritual connection. So, this system requires knowledge on how to contact a spirit in the first place. The pendulum could be an amazing tool, a great way to obtain initial answers from a spirit once you know both the method of the pendulum for divination and the etiquette, the respect necessary to contact a spirit. But to obtain initial answers, a pendulum can be amazing. Of course, you will not get far without a proper connection to the spirit, and you won't get far without a proper invocation technique. But the pendulum can be great for initial contacts when you need straight answers. For example, if you need to understand what kind of offerings are accepted from that spirit, or if you need to make proposals for better connections. For example, a better day to meet, a better occasion, a better place, a better offering, what you are offering, if it's right, and so on, of course. Now, these are my suggestions for alternative methods. Now, let's talk in specific about the pendulum itself. What I'm talking about. I am suggesting that maybe you want to keep multiple pendulums. First of all, you should ask yourself, why should I keep multiple pendulums? And you should also ask yourself, is it necessary for me to keep multiple pendulums? Now, as you can clearly tell, I mainly use mine, and I tend to seek the help of other pendulums that I keep only for communication with specific spirits those pendulums are consecrated for. And you may want to do the same, or you may even want to keep different pendulums for different purposes in your collection. For example, a pendulum that is specialized on love, or for money magic, or anything that comes to your mind straight away. Now, you should follow your personal preference in this case. If you want to keep one for everything, or if you want a few specialized pendulums. Now, remember that if you keep multiple pendulums, you should take care of all of them. So it's a responsibility, and you should take it seriously. Then, on a different note, we should talk about improvised pendulums, because even though I am the one of the few, to my knowledge, that I know that use this kind of technique. Improvised pendulum, at least in my opinion, should be used in special occasions, or when you find yourself with your back against the wall. Because to improvise the construction of a pendulum, you need an amazing technique and in the use of the pendulum, and you need to understand and to have proper consciousness of unconscious communication. So, of course, getting in tune with your subconscious mind, catching easily micro movements with the pendulum, and so on. Also, to improvise, to build a pendulum on the spot, on the fly, you need to understand the fact that everything in the universe is connected and interconnected. And also everything in the universe is vibrating. At the same time, is also in constant movement. Then you can make a pendulum with everything, with, of course, proper consecration and purification, just like we always do. And you can use almost any material. In my experience, natural materials are best used for this purpose. For example, acorns, small pine cones, cypress pine cones are extremely useful for this kind of practice. You just need to have with you a piece of string, or if you have very long hairs, you may want to use a long hair if you got a strong one. Please do remember to always give proper offerings. So, usually food, incense, or in our tradition, often 7 coins. Most often 7 copper coins. So, at this point, if you want to keep the improvised pendulum, you need to work harder to keep it with you in the long term, if you want to keep it, of course. Now, we are at the end of this episode. I hope I was as clear as I can with my broken English. Let me know if you have any other questions about the pendulum. Otherwise, as always, I deeply thank you for your kind attention, and may eternal light shine upon you.